Hi. Before going to video, please subscribe to my channel for more interesting stuff.
Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/thinkingmeat. My terrifying ghost story, that you'll all think is funny, but it's not. Okay, so a few things. I'm now 50, I'm an electrical and electronics engineer, so have a particular way of observing things, thinking about them and explaining them. When I go on a job, I have to approach it logically and methodically and work out what is really happening by testing, measuring and observing. So I'm not taken to flights of fancy, and to this end I actually don't believe in ghosts. Even to this day, with my experience, I can't bring myself to overcome my years of training and my experience to believe in something that I can't explain. I think orbs in photos are obviously illuminated dust close to the lens. I think EVP is whatever someone wants to hear, and psychics are con men and women. I'm also not religious or spiritual. I think once you're gone, that's it, you're gone. This is my initial experience, that I brushed off, and then my reassessment when my dad told me his story. This is 100% genuine, and when it happened it terrified me, but when I tell anyone they think it's funny or some kind of joke. I had put it totally behind me, but my dad, who is now well into his 70s, told me something recently that has made me question whether I'm kind of fooling myself. I just don't know what to think anymore. So here I am, and here is the story. In 1985, my exam year, we moved house from an old Victorian terrace into a new house, and it was new, built maybe 15 years earlier on old fields. This is rural England, no Indian burial grounds, old graveyards, early English or Roman graves or anything silly like that. It was pasture fields for cows, always had been, and nothing else. When we moved in I was 15, youngest in my year at school, and everything was great. Over time I'd go through spells where I'd wake up feeling like I was being pushed into the bed, or wake up from a deep sleep. I sleep really deeply and never remember my dreams, while having a great dream, and feel instantly afraid, like there was something dark, i.e. evil, in the room. Lots of stuff like this. It would go on for a few weeks, then nothing. Couple of months later it would start all over again. I went to the library, bought books, talked to people. Yes, this was, if you can imagine it, before the internet. I came to the conclusion that it was sleep paralysis or something along those lines, because it always happened when I was either asleep or just about to fall asleep. This went on for ages. Then one night when I was about 22 or 23, I was working 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., I'd been on the evening shift. By the time I got home it was about 11 p.m. My usual thing was to watch junk TV for a couple of hours or so to wind down, while doing this to have a snack, have a few cups of tea, then go to bed at 2 am-ish. So there I am watching TV, Mum and Dad have gone to bed, the only door into the room is right by my right hand side, there are big gardens to front and rear of the room, no one there but me. I'm looking at an angle to my left watching TV, and suddenly to my right I hear someone fart. This is where people start laughing, but I swear it isn't a joke. And I wasn't laughing. In the split second it took my head to turn from the TV to the sound of the farting, I'd already come to the conclusion my mum or dad must have walked into the room and farted. That's ludicrous for all manner of reasons. First, they are old school English. If they dropped one in public they'd die of embarrassment. Second, there would be no reason for them to walk into that room unless they were going to sit and watch TV. And third, the door at my side was definitely and firmly closed still. I have to admit the hairs on the back of my neck stood up because I was sure I'd heard it. But hey, I'm an engineer working in fields involving sound systems, and so since no one is there, and therefore no one can have farted, I must have imagined it, or it was a sound on the TV program. So, I gingerly started watching TV again, even though I was a bit uncomfortable. I don't know how much later it was, 5, 10, 20 minutes later, I've just taken a sip of my cup of tea and have completely forgotten about what happened, and I hear it again from the same place. But this time, I don't know if it was louder or clearer or I was more edgy, but this time, I am 100% sure that I definitely heard it, and this was not some sound on the TV or my imagination. I turn and look again and there's nothing there, but now the hairs on the back of my neck are really stood out, and as I'm sat there wondering what the hell just happened, within a couple of seconds max, this smell appeared, and it was vile. I can't even describe it. It wasn't a fart smell, but if you could ever smell a smell that made you think, the thing that did this wants to hurt you, that was the smell. I dumped my cup of tea on the coffee table, spun round and opened the door, shot out of it shutting it behind me, ran to my room and sat there all night with the light on saying the Lord's Prayer. And I am not religious, I don't believe in a God. It freaked me out that much. Over the last 30 plus years I've played it down and down in my mind to the conclusion it can't have happened because ghosts don't exist, and that's what I've stuck with. Until a few weeks ago. And now I'm not sure at all. What happened is that my mom and dad moved from that house to an even newer one, about 10 years old. My dad's been ill with pneumonia, so since he's up coughing and sputtering all night, he's in one room, my mom is in the other. One night my mom's asleep and she feels someone prodding her arm, over and over again. She assumes it's my dad who isn't feeling well and is trying to wake her up. In her sleepy state she says yes, what do you want? No answer. What do you want? No answer, and the prodding carries on. She wakes up and says, what do you want? And when she looks, there's an old woman stood there prodding her arm. Mom freaks out and hides under the covers. When she gathers the courage to look, no one there. Wakes up dad, they go downstairs and turn the alarm off, downstairs only, no one there. Search the house, no one there. Freaky bit. I think my mom's imagining things, and jokingly say to my dad a couple of weeks later, hey, maybe it's the ghost from the old house that's followed you, woo etc. He says, no, we didn't bring her with us. So I say, what do you mean by her? Well, it was an old woman. How do you mean? I saw her. Turns out he'd seen a ghost at the old house plain as day. He actually thought he'd left the front door unlocked and someone had wandered in. He was sat in the kitchen, the door opened and she was stood looking at him. She turned around, literally a 90-degree turn, and walked into the living room, where I had my experience. He followed her in, one door in, nowhere to hide, no one there. He'd always told me he'd seen things out of the corner of his eye but thought he must be imagining it, but never this. Talked to my sister, who'd moved out maybe 5 years before all of this. She said, oh yeah, he told me that years ago, but he didn't say anything to you because he thought you and mom would be scared and would want to move house, and he couldn't afford to. So there I am thinking I'm going mad, deciding I'm imagining things, and all along my blinking dad had seen it and knew it was real. So, what does this mean? Was it a ghost? Do ghosts exist? Etc. I've never had another experience since I moved out, and I still can't bring myself to accept it was a ghost over some other more rational explanation. I mean, why would a blinking ghost fart, and how could it? At 50 years old I just can't accept ghosts are real and there isn't always a logical scientific explanation, even if it isn't obvious. Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/palabanana20. Ghost encounter. Few things before we get started. This was not a direct encounter. All windows were closed. Also, this probably can be explained, but it terrifies me nonetheless. Here we go. I was probably 9 to 12 years old. It was fairly late, around 10:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. I remember I was just screwing around on the internet, probably watching YouTube. There are cabinets right outside the door of my room, and they started slamming. Now I was used to my cats getting into them and messing around, but this slamming was quick. I knew damn well my cats couldn't do that. So that cause was ruled out. I figured it could have been the video I had been watching, so I paused it. But the banging didn't stop. It wasn't that. Then I figured it was my brother fucking with me, or my mom. But there was no way. My mom was downstairs doing whatever she was doing, and my brother was asleep. Just before the incident he was sleeping, and I can tell when he is sleeping. Also, it couldn't have been my brother cause it started practically as soon as I left him room. All three possible causes were out of the question. So I determined ghosts were terrorizing me. I didn't dare go out and check to see some ghost cabinets opening and closing, so there is maybe another way it could have happened, but honestly I doubt it. Well, I hope this was at least a little bit enjoyable to read. Bye. Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/Fred. The ghost that followed me for 7 years. So this is a long story. Back when I was in senior high school, we have 6 years of elementary school, 3 years of junior high school, and 3 years of senior high school. Around 7 years ago, I lived with my 2 sisters. I started to have a nightmare every single time I fall asleep. The nightmares were always about this woman ghost that keeps chasing me. For the first few weeks I thought it was nothing. Until the nightmares continue and the ghost chasing me keeps getting closer to me, even almost choked me with its hand before I managed to wake myself up. Of course I told my mom about the whole nightmares I've been getting. My mom believes me. I've posted about childhood ghost in this subreddit before. Long story short, my mom tried to find a priest to cleanse me. He told my mom to do a few things. But nothing's work. I still keep getting those nightmares and it gets scarier to the point that I'm afraid to sleep. Then I begin to have sleep paralysis. In that sleep paralysis I will hear a lot of noises, like woman noises laughing hysterically. I will do everything to force myself to wake up. The next day when I'm home after high school about 6 p.m., my sisters have left to the mall and asked me what I want for dinner. So basically I'm home alone without anyone. I went to take a shower. After only 5 minutes in the shower, Someone knocked on my bathroom door. 3 times, like knock knock knock. I answered and said that I just got in. When I finished showering, my blood runs cold as I remember I'm home alone. I quickly get dressed and go outside the house until my sisters came back. The other time I got the knock again was at 5:30 a.m. I always wake up at around 5 a.m. because my school bus arrived at 6. I went to take a morning shower and something fucking knocked on my door again. And I also fucking answered and opened the bathroom door and nothing. Not even a single sound. Nor anyone. I need to remind you all of this is happening alongside my nightmares and sleep paralysis. When I went to my parents' home at weekend, my mom then brought me to a paranormal. The paranormal told me that this ghost had been following me since 5 years ago. And slowly but surely she wants to show herself. I don't fucking know why. That's why the paranormal activity happening to me keeps getting worse. The ghost had been following me since I was in elementary school at my hometown small school that I attended back then. The paranormal gave me a protector, charm, then told me to bathe in flowers then throw the flowers back to the old school of mine. After that, my nightmare is all gone. I still have it sometimes, but not every time I fall asleep. And my mom also prohibited me to go to that old school anymore. 2 years later, I went to the university in another province and island from my town. It's a 3 hours flight. So I live alone. 6 months after living alone, I lose my charm, protector. I searched everywhere but I can't find it so I gave up. The night when I fell asleep, the nightmare is back. I dreamed about that woman ghost again. I wake up at midnight and try to go back to sleep again. After only closing my eyes for a second, my glass plate fell down from my desk and shattered into pieces. It can't be caused by wind because I put it flat at the middle of the desk. I also sleep with window and door closed and AC on. I was so scared that I don't go back to sleep until morning. My mom went to the paranormal again and asked for a new protector and sent it to me. And until now, I haven't experienced any more nightmares related to that story. But I have a story when I went to rural area in Indonesia for community service. I'll write about it later. Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/stratus583. Terrifying encounter. This happened to me 3 years ago when I was 16 years old. Me and my younger brother, 12 years old at the time, used to share a bedroom. Our beds were slightly separated but not too far from each other. One Saturday morning at around 9 a.m. I was laying in bed watching YouTube videos with headphones on while my brother was sleeping. The room was silent the whole time until I heard a horrifying hysterical laughter coming from my brother's bedside. I immediately turned to look at my brother because I thought he was trying to be funny but he was in a deep slumber. The voice sounded like a classic witch laugh. That's why I thought it was him, but it was too loud and strong and it had a weird unsettling tone to it that no way in hell it could be him. I froze for 30 seconds. I couldn't move my legs to get up and leave the room. Then I thought maybe it was from the YouTube video that I was watching, so I replayed the vid and desperately wanted to hear it again in the video. And there was nothing. I immediately got up and stayed in the living room for 3 hours until my mom got home to tell her what I just experienced. We experienced a lot of paranormal activities in the house, but it wasn't as blatant as this. It was just objects moving, doors shutting, glass breaking at 3 a.m. and sounds of someone doing the dishes when literally no one is in the kitchen. But we never heard a voice before, and for me to hear it like that, it was terrifying. So when my mom got home and I told her, she told me it probably was my brother trying to scare me. And I know it's not him, like it was a woman's voice and it sounded so different than any woman's voice that I heard before and way too strong for my 12 years old brother to make. Fast forward 3 months later, my mom is terrified and said that she heard a woman's voice hysterically laughing in her bedroom and explained it as a classic witch laugh. I didn't experience anything as blatant after this, and I still feel a presence in my room at night but nothing harming. And whenever I told this to anyone, they would just look at me like I'm crazy and no one believed me, so I just stopped telling it. Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/maybe1. My grandpa's ghost gave me a welcome. When this happened, I was 14 and this was in 2018 December. We lived in a house with the grandmother of my mother's side. Both my granddads killed themselves. This sounds much worse than it really is, but no one misses them. They were both alcoholics and the one from my mother's side always hit my mom and my grandma. I don't have ghost stories from that house, but I have a really good one from my father's side of family's house. The story: my family, my mom, dad and me, went over to my other grandparents' place for Christmas around the 25th of December. It's a pretty old house with a relatively big garden. There is enough place for a garage, a small garden and chicken den. My grandpa always had my aunt as his favorite child. which nowadays comes out as my aunt being a spoiled bitch and my father being a hard worker. My dad was always the one reprimanded for every little mistake. Didn't work enough? No contact with family. Didn't eat every last bit of food, which he by the way hated and does to this day. Sit there until you eat it. Doesn't matter if you sit there until 2 a.m. My grandfather craved attention when he was drunk. So how did he express that attention wanting? By hanging himself. This happened around 20 to 30 times while he was alive, until one day, November 3, 2006. When he actually managed to make the news strong enough, and he finally died. Before he passed, I was his dream child. He always took me on tours, fishing and gave me the world. I was 2 when he died, so I don't remember only one case, when he took me on a motorbike ride in the front basket. So anyway, my dad has me and a half-sibling. Even though we aren't full siblings, we hold contact still to this day. His mother took him from my dad when he was 5, but only because he could choose which parent to go to, and his mother manipulated him. He always stayed at their house and almost never went back home. His mother almost abused him. He was there and welcomed me to his room, since he had stuff to show me. There was a little $half-dollar-sized candle they lit the day before at around 6 a.m. and stayed lit all night. It had no more wick or wax left, so there was no flame or any way that it could spark back to life. The way the house is set up, there is a smaller room before the main room there, so he was showing me something on his computer in the smaller room, and when we went into the main room, the damn candle lit up and went so high, it almost touched the ceiling. Both of us were so shocked that we screamed and we asked each other, "Did you see that also?" The candle settled down, but it still had a very high flame for that type of candle. My dad, hearing both of us scream, came into the room, and as soon as he stepped into the room, the candle went out. We explained what happened, but since he wasn't looking at the part of the room where the candle was, he didn't believe us, and since me and my brother are the only one who know this happened, we have no picture or video proof. Our theory was that, since I wasn't there for a long while, the spirit/ghost of my grandpa gave me a very hot welcome, pun intended. Let me hear your thoughts on this. TL Doctor, I went back to my grandpa's house after a long while and he gave an otherworldly welcome. Edit, fix spelling mistakes. Story from r/paranormal. Posted by u/sexualized eggplant. I've been haunted since childhood. I've posted a couple of times recently, but I thought it may be nice to just go over everything I've experienced in my life spooky wise. When I was super young, like around 2, so I obviously have no first-hand recollection of this, I had an attachment that I described to my mom as a Native American chief. She's told me I used to run from him screaming and crying, and after I was well past her she could feel a burst of cold air follow. He tormented me day and night until she did some type of cleansing to banish him and placed a white candle in my window to keep him away. For as long as I can remember she made sure I knew I couldn't move the candle, and it always followed us when we moved. We had a family friend I referred to as Uncle John, though he had no relation to me. Apparently I adored the man and he would get me to dance a lot. I was still really young BTW. After he passed I would still talk to him and do the dance randomly. Around this time a family member went to the hospital, and while in their room I was looking out the window and said, "Mommy, look at all the angels out there." She said this is probably one of the scariest things I've said to her, but she can't really pinpoint why it was so frightening. Most of my childhood was fairly quiet after that, which I give the candle credit for, until my parents divorced and started dating again when I was in middle school. My dad met Margaret, who was a paranormal investigator. Specifically, she could sketch spirits, and I immediately adored her because I've always been interested in scary stuff, but my dad was a huge skeptic. There is a very small, very old cemetery a ways behind my dad's house, so she decided we were going to do a mini investigation there one night. I was in charge of taking pictures while she tried to get EVPs. We couldn't hear or see anything while there, but I told her I could feel something. Without telling me what she was feeling, she asked me questions such as, "Do you think they're male or female? And do they seem younger or older?" I told her I thought there was a young boy and his dad, to which she agreed. Soon after this, one of my legs started feeling cold and electrified, what most people describe when being touched by a spirit. We went back to check the pictures and recordings and found I had caught a lot of what appeared to be orbs. Most were white, but in some of the pictures we kept seeing one that was red. Upon listening, we heard a child, a man, and a woman who sounded incredibly angry, maybe because we weren't aware of her. Even my dad was taken aback and felt shaken because he couldn't explain it. Soon after they broke up, and that was the end of my amateur ghost hunting days. A while later, when I was 16-17, my mom was remarried and we rented a house that was surrounded by forest at least half a mile from the road. The bedrooms were on opposite ends of the house and each had a private bathroom, and mine also had its own porch. Initially I loved it. My own bathroom and porch. Hell yeah. But soon I realized that I never felt alone. It was worst on the porch or in the bathroom, but my closet doors were mirrors and I always felt afraid of them. The first thing I noticed was I hated my bathroom window. Even with the candle in it, I always felt like someone was looking in at me despite it being forced behind the house. I never looked at it and spent as little time in the bathroom as I could. I felt the same way outside because behind the porch was the same area of forest. I still went out there to smoke, my wee rebellion as a teen, but I could never shake that feeling and some of the sounds never felt right. Obviously some of it had to be creatures living in the woods, but some of the things I heard made my gut freak out. I just knew it wasn't an animal somehow. One thing I forgot to mention is that my bedroom had a smaller room attached to it that I eventually made my bedroom while the original became my personal living room. I just couldn't stand sleeping in front of all those mirrors because the closet took up a whole wall. That room really didn't feel any better though, and I once took a picture that had a screaming face in it. The most chilling incident had to be the ghost creature though. My room attached to the kitchen on one side and the living room attached to the other side. I was in the kitchen making food and out of the corner of my eye I see what I thought was my mom's blue heeler go in my room, before I moved rooms, and under my bed. Which was weird because he was too fat to fit under the bed. I turn and walk to the living room only to see both dogs are fast asleep on the couch. I stayed far away from the room for a few hours after that. Now I no longer have the candle. I moved so many times in a couple years span that I lost it. And things are mostly normal. I have a couple posts about my attic ghost Paul and some sleep paralysis events if you're interested, they're recent. If you actually read all of this, thank you for caring about my weird incidents and feel free to comment any questions, concerns, or anything you may want to share. Bonus spook, things my mom has experienced. Many years ago my mom worked as an overnight CNA at a nursing home. I've seen this almost exact type of experience spoken of from other nursing homes after she told me, and I think the consistency is amazing. There were 3 spirits who roamed the halls that they named the Lady in White, the Man in Black, and the Priest. The first 2 descriptions were obvious and the priest was a grayish apparition. They knew when the residents were close to passing when they mentioned one of these 3 visiting them in their rooms or when they saw the apparition enter a room. Additionally, they always died in threes. They all agreed the Lady in White was the escort to heaven. The Man in Black was for hell, but they weren't quite sure about the third. I can only assume he was in charge of purgatory/limbo. Now the scariest thing my mom has ever told me that I truly hope I never experience. She awoke in the middle of the night to a specter standing above her. She saw his face and knew she was looking at death himself. To this day she doesn't know why he was there or why he just left, but she was unsettlingly calm about this occurrence. Personally, I would have shat myself and died immediately. I wonder if she was supposed to die that night. He had mercy on her. All I know is I'm glad he didn't take her, and I hope he waits a long time before he does.
Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe for more videos.